SoCal Connected is made possible through the generous support of the Amundsen Foundation, serving the Los Angeles community since 1952.
On tonight's SoCal Connected.
She said, "What did I do?" I told the truth. "You didn't do anything, sweetie." The system. And I tell everybody that. It wasn't you, it wasn't this, it wasn't that. It was a system.
We have a system that's based upon people. As long as people have faults, we're gonna have mistakes.
This could happen to anybody. Somebody could place you in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that could be you. What would you do?
I was 18 years old when I had Kiera. That was my first born. She was always like such a little lady. Straight A student, kept her grades up, loved to dance, loved to sing, loved to do hair, and loved her siblings. She was a really, really happy kid.
When Kiera was 13, she started dating a boy who lived in the neighborhood. His name was Markel Norman.
My mom loved him, my family, you know, the kids loved him. I've never seen him do anything bad, but I heard he joined the gang. And when I found out that, I told her, I said, look. I don't want you dating him. You could be standing with someone and if you're not affiliated with it, someone can kill you. I said, I can see myself walking you to his funeral. And guess what happened? I ended up walking her to his funeral.
In December 2000, Markel was killed in a drive-by while Kiera was standing next to him.
He was a 17-year-old kid, got shot in the head right in front of my daughter. I got a phone call from the principal at Duke Ellington. He heard about what happened to Markel. Do not bring her back because we fear for her life because these are gang members. That's how she got to say charter.
When Kiera came here, she really just wanted to get her credits and get out. That was her goal. She would write actually to me sometimes in her journal, sometimes asking for advice and things like that. So we did kind of develop a relationship over the course of her time in my class. She was just like very friendly, sweet, motivated and hardworking student.
Just before lunchtime on April 16, 2001, about 10 miles south of Kiera's school, a group of guys were sitting on their front lawn smoking weed when a car pulled up to the curb. A young woman got out of the front seat and called out to the guys. They thought she was flirting with them, until she reached into the car, grabbed a gun, and fired it once, hitting one of them in the neck. His name was Christian Hinton, a known member of the Block Crips. The guys scattered at the sound of the gun. The car sped down the street and was never found. And 2 weeks later, Hinton died in the hospital.
June 4th, 2001, the detectives knocked on my door. is Kiara Newsome here? And I said, no, she's not here. What's going on? Could you bring Kiera in? No problem. That's what we doing as parents. Take her in there. They walk my daughter in the back, and you can, the thing is, all I can hear was chains and keys, and my husband, she was like, what's going on? I'm banging on the door, hey, what's going on? Ma'am, you need to go to the front. To the front of what? We brought her in here. I said, look, I have paperwork, whatever you guys need. It was like, no, ma'am. She's arrested for murder.
A post-conviction attorney spends every day overwhelmed with regret and doubt because you're trying to unlock cases that have long been consigned to history. And of course, you're always wondering whether you've made the right step. You're wondering whether or not you could have made a better argument, found more evidence, been more convincing with a witness, gotten this person to talk to you instead of yelling at you and slamming the door in your face.
Chris Hawthorne runs the Juvenile Innocence and Fair Sentencing Clinic at Loyola Law School in downtown LA. All of his clients were given harsh sentences as juveniles. Hawthorne and his law students are working to get them out, either through parole, a shortened sentence, or in rare cases, an exoneration.
Actually, this is a client that called me today because he got out. He's out of prison, and now he's out in the world. So I'm going to put his name down here and erase him from the winner's circle. That's cool. That makes a space for someone else. I've got to fill it.
Sachs joined Hawthorne's clinic after graduating from Loyola in 2017. She's now a legal fellow.
This is me and Hawthorne trying to look as intense as the experience and as this bear. I like to say I'm the Robin to his Batman, but he doesn't like that. He's like, no, you're not a Robin. You're also a Batman.
I think Marissa's the ideal person to do this kind of work. Very few people do post-conviction. It's a high failure, difficult, emotionally taxing area of law, which is not for everyone.
Kiera's case landed on Hawthorne's desk in 2013. He and Sachs have only 2 of those rotating law students to help fight for her exoneration. Hawthorne and his team are working on something called a habeas petition. Habeas corpus means unearthing the body. It's a narrow and difficult path to exoneration.
How long do you think you'll work today?
I don't know. I really want to get this done tonight, so it's already 11:30. I'm nowhere close to finishing this argument, so probably like 3.
The team is working long hours on the petition, and a big part of that work is looking back at the original evidence to see what went wrong. There were 3 witnesses that day. Each of them gave a description of the shooter to the police.
They all described her outfit in relatively similar terms. Red sneakers, red shorts, red tube top, red visor, black hair, African American, fairly tall, 22 to 24 years old. One of them mentioned that they thought she had a lazy eye, that she had been looking off in one direction when it should be looking in another direction. And a couple of them mentioned that she had a tattoo on her thigh, but they didn't know what it said. And his gang name was Tiny No Good. Had I been able to give Kiera some fatherly advice back when she was 12 or 13 years old, I would say, don't get your boyfriend's gang name tattooed on your upper thigh because it could come back to haunt you.
This one's my classroom.
It looks smaller than I remember.
Yeah.
Rebecca Woodruff hasn't stepped into this classroom in 16 years. She was Kiera's teacher on the day of the murder, and she's a critical witness for the defense.
On the day that the police came to the school, I was pretty surprised. They asked me if Kiara Newsome was my student and was she here on that day. I said, well, yeah, she was here that day. You know, look at my attendance records.
Attendance records show Kiera signed into school at 8 a.m. She was marked present at 10:15 and again just before lunch at 12:15.
After they left, my teacher's assistant and I found 6 assignments that Kiera had done that same day.
In my time as a lawyer, I've seen a lot of alibis, and this was definitely the strongest alibi I've ever seen.
Christian Hinton was shot at 11:30 a.m., approximately 10 miles away from the school, about a 30-minute drive each way.
Kiara Newsome would have had to sneak out of her classroom under the watchful eye of Rebecca Woodruff. She would have had to somehow gotten out of that school. The front door is locked and monitored constantly by a person. In the car, she would have to change out of her school uniform, which was white polo shirt and black slacks, and into the outfit that the killer was wearing. Then she would have had to have shot Christian Hinton, jump back in the car, and get back at her desk by the time the 12:15 roll call was taken so that she could do her next homework assignment.
I do remember there being barbed wire.
So
back
she
then,
couldn't have
too.
climbed over that. That
No.
even the most enterprising teenager might have a really tough time clearing an
barbed wire.
8-foot-high fence topped with barbed wire.
Yeah.
The investigators at the LA Sheriff's Department quickly zero in on Kiera, on the theory that the shooting is payback for her boyfriend's death. Hinton was a Crip. Markell was a Hoover. It was just another gang retaliation shooting in South LA. After an 11-day trial, Kiera was convicted of murder, based solely on the testimony of those 3 witnesses, all of whom admit they were high at the time of the shooting. There is no physical evidence tying her to the crime, no DNA, no fingerprints. The weapon is never found.
I believe the evidence was weak to begin with, and she should never have been convicted. And I believe that Kiara Newsome is innocent. I don't know how this case has not been overturned already.
Once a conviction is made, it's nearly impossible to get someone out of prison. The lawyers must show new evidence not shown at the trial, that proves Kiera's innocence. Gathering that evidence has taken Hawthorne and his students 5 years to collect.
You really get one chance with a habeas petition. That's why you wait to gather enough evidence so you think you can actually win on that petition. If you file it too soon, then you blow that evidence and it's no longer new.
The team is hopeful because one of the pieces of new evidence they've gathered is big. Ryan Faust, a witness for the prosecution, originally identified Kiera as the killer. He now claims that when the Los Angeles Sheriff's investigators showed him a collection of suspects back in 2001, Kiera's photo was already circled.
They showed me a 6-pack. The picture was already circled. He was like, "This the girl who shot your uncle." And then they like the initial right here, like, and I'm like, "Oh, I never seen her in my life."
He also claims detectives intimidated him, following him around town, trying to get him to testify in court.
They kept coming to my house like, "Come to court, come to court." I wasn't gonna go. And they like, "We know you have this warrant. If you don't come to court, we're gonna arrest you." And using threatening tactics on me. The police was the one telling me, like, "This is the one, this is the one."
Faust says he agreed to testify because he was afraid of being arrested. He was under immense pressure to identify the suspect, which he did, pointing Kiera out in the courtroom as the woman he saw that day.
And what Ryan told us was basically that he had not seen Kiera that day.
If the one witness is accurate and he was shown a 6-pack with one face circled, that would be considered very bad practice. If it's solid evidence that it's really reasonable to start worrying that that problem officer did something with the others as well.
But Hawthorne's team can't speak to the other witnesses to find out if they were also manipulated by investigators. One, Robert Johnson is now dead, and the other, Joe Cook, has fled the state. Investigators believe he is in Las Vegas and doesn't want to be found, which is a problem because even though they got Ryan Faust to officially recant his testimony, one recantation isn't usually enough to convince a judge of wrongdoing.
It's not necessarily enough that the person comes forward later and says, I was pressured to make this ID or I was tricked to make this ID, because the counter argument will be, why didn't you say that sooner? You're just saying that because you're trying to help the defendant. It's going to take a lot more than that, generally, to get a conviction overturned.
The Innocence Project in New York has now gathered information on something like 350 wrongly convicted people. And when those cases have been analyzed, more than 70%, the primary cause is faulty eyewitness testimony.
But that's not the only thing working against Kiera. At the trial, one of the three witnesses, Joe Cook, was asked to identify the shooter's tattoo.
Shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Do you see the person that you described as the shooter? Do you see her here in court today? And if so, can you point to her and state where she's seated and what she's wearing now?
She's wearing all blue.
And that's the person that you described as the shooter?
Yeah.
And looking at the two pictures of this tattoo, do you recognize this tattoo?
Yes.
Okay. And where did you first see this tattoo?
The day of the shooting.
Okay, and would that be the tattoo?
The DA made a great deal of the idea that Kiara Newsome's thigh tattoo was a unique mark, like a mole or a birthmark, that could only be possessed by one person in this case. But in fact, there was another person in this case who also had a thigh tattoo. That was Danielle Flynn. The only thing that Ryan Faust originally remembered about the shooter's tattoo was that it had a big N in it. But Danielle Flynn also has a tattoo. The two tattoos were never compared to each other at trial. More importantly, I don't believe the police ever showed Ryan Faust, Bobby Johnson, or Joe Cook Danielle Flynn's tattoo at all. It's the theory of this clinic and the theory of a lot of people who have looked at this case that in fact Danielle Flynn was the shooter.
Flynn was also known as Lady Astro. In South LA, she was a known member of the 11 Deuce Hoovers. Testifying against her came with risk.
So in gang cases, witnesses are fully exposed. They're just trying to figure out, what do I say that gets me out of here? That means that nobody will retaliate against me or my family, and that is fairly credible. Now, that's hard. They are living the reality of their lives. I don't think they're saying, I'm out to get the defendant. I think they're saying, between the defendant and me, I'm going to survive.
They figured that this was all going to work itself out on the street. They probably also thought that Kiara Newsome would be acquitted, because most people think that an innocent person is generally acquitted.
But Kiera wasn't acquitted, and Danielle Flynn was, even though 10 years later, she was arrested for homicide in Las Vegas. Kiera was tried as an adult, convicted and ordered to serve 60 years to life, and she is one of thousands of people that post-conviction attorneys believe were not given a fair trial.
The most recent estimates are about 5% of the people in prison for the most serious types of crimes, so that would be homicide or rape, are actually not guilty. And if you add that up as to what it means across the country, that's about 200,000 people who are wrongfully convicted sitting in American prisons. Let's do it.
Hawthorne and his team have finally gathered all the new evidence to submit their petition. Now, the waiting begins. 45 days until they get a decision back from the judge.
So, Kiera, we filed the reply to your informal response this morning.
This whole thing is like crazy. But one thing about it right now is like I'm not in fear. I'm not scared. I'm not afraid. I know I'm innocent, so I feel like right now, like, what do I have to lose? I have everything to gain right now.
If the judge says no, we've lost our best chance to get Kiara Newsome what she deserves as quickly as possible.
You have a prepaid call from
Kiera,
an inmate at the California Institution for Women, Corona, California.
I'm so anxious. I'm just like, a part of me is confused. A part of me is wondering if they're going to do the right thing. I hope that the judge will see through all of this chaos and I could finally just walk free and be the person that I was intended to be. And it's my last chance.
People who do this kind of work have said, be careful with hope, because your client has learned to live her life in prison without it, or without much of it. And when you give your client too much hope, you create the danger you're going to take it away again.
After 56 days of waiting, a letter arrives from the Torrance Superior Court.
Okay, let's open it.
Andrew, do you want to come in here a second? We got something.
Actually,
Torrance Superior Court. Ready?
You want to sit?
Denied.
All the claims?
Untimely, ineffective assistance of counsel.
So each one was denied. Wow. As positive as we try to be, it's hard. It's going to be hard for Kiera's family, the students who have been working on this petition. I think Hawthorne tries to model for us professional behavior because we're attorneys and the students are training to be attorneys. And so not getting so emotionally involved is sort of important in some ways, but there's no way to not get emotionally involved.
Hawthorne and the team's next move will be to file a new petition in the Court of Appeal. But that process could take anywhere from several months to several years. And even if that court accepts, Kiera's case could go back to the Torrance Superior Court for review. The same court that just denied their habeas petition. But Hawthorne remains hopeful.
Eventually, Kiara Newsome will get out of prison, one way or another. She'll get out because she's innocent, or she'll get out because she paroles and continue to pursue her innocence claim outside of prison. So one day or another, she will get out of prison, and I don't have to abandon her just because I don't get it right this time.
She is a part of my life. I mean, she'll always be a part of my life because of this. Sometimes if her family can't pay for packages or whatever, she'll send them to me and I'll take care of it. If her family can't come out and visit her, I'll make an effort to try to come out and visit her. I had talked to somebody who had been exonerated and he told me, he's like, you and Kiera have this bond that nobody else has, that you know the truth and she knows the truth. And that's something that you will always have with each other that nobody else has, because you know that she was there and she knows that she was there.
We can't afford to have mistakes. We have to care about every individual, whether they're a gang member or not a gang member, whatever their situation. They were entitled to a fair trial, and in order to have a justice system we believe in, we have to get it right.
She's still doing everything she was doing out here. She got her high school diploma, she got 2 associate degrees, and she's still singing, she's still dancing. She didn't stop. It didn't stop her.
If I was to give up, I would be letting the justice system win. They would rather me just die in here and let this whole thing fade away like it never happened. I want the truth about what happened to be known. I don't know. I just feel like something's bigger going to happen to me. And I can't wait. And I just can't wait to just be able to jump on my mom, grab her, tackle her down to the ground.
I just can't. Every year, we go through this. Every year, someone tells her they about to help her out, and then it doesn't happen. Then she knows, but it hurts because they put it on her like, okay, we got you, and this and that gonna happen. Then I have to suffer behind all that because I'm the one sitting up here telling you, you coming home. You be home.